You are not broken. You are simply exhausted by the noise in your own head. The late-night thoughts, the endless what-ifs, the replays of every unfinished moment, none of these define you. They are just echoes of a mind trying to protect itself from pain. But you are not here to play defense anymore. You are here to learn control, to build command, to silence the noise by understanding it. By the end of this audiobook, you will not think less. You will think right. You will know when to pause, when to act, and how to stay calm in uncertainty. If you have ever felt trapped inside your mind, this journey is your release. Let's begin. You wake up every morning already tired, but not because your body failed to rest. You're tired because your mind has been sprinting all night. Thoughts don't sleep. They replay yesterday. They preview tomorrow. And they rarely, if ever, stay quiet long enough for you to feel peace. You call it planning. You call it preparing for what might come. But really, it's fear disguised as productivity. It's the need to control what can't be controlled. And the harder you try, the louder it gets. Overthinking feels safe because it gives the illusion of progress. You believe you're getting ready. But readiness built on fear never becomes confidence. It becomes hesitation dressed up as logic. Let me remind you, thinking is a gift. Overthinking is a habit. Thinking produces movement. Overthinking delays it. Thinking asks, what's the next right step? Overthinking asks, how do I guarantee I'll never fall? That second question has no answer, and your mind knows it. That's why it loops. The same doubt, the same memory, the same worries, cycling endlessly because the outcome you're asking for doesn't exist. So here's the truth. The war you're fighting isn't between you and the world. It's between awareness and noise. Hundreds of random thoughts trying to convince you that each one deserves attention. They don't. A thought is not an order, it's a notification. You wouldn't answer every message on your phone at once, so why answer every thought? The healthiest minds develop discipline, not silence. They don't try to erase thoughts, they choose which to feed. Try this small drill. When a worry hits, what if I fail? Label it. Say to yourself, that's fear. Then watch what happens. Labeling detaches you from identification. You move from being the thought to observing it. Observation turns chaos into pattern. Pattern becomes clarity. Every time you name a thought instead of drowning in it, you train awareness like a muscle. Awareness doesn't shout, it whispers. But your peace depends on it. Here's what overthinkers miss. They believe more control creates peace, but true peace begins when you trust yourself enough to move even without perfect certainty. You'll never think your way into total safety, but you can act your way into confidence. Take the athlete moments before a championship play. His mind is roaring with possibilities, victory, humiliation, injury. But the second he moves, instinct takes over and the noise fades. Movement replaces mental chatter. You can do the same. The sentence you need carved into your mind is simple. Thoughts are suggestions, not commands. If you live by that line, anxiety loses half its fuel. The rest burns off through consistent action. Action is not the enemy of reflection, it's the completion of it. Reflection without execution becomes rumination, a recycling plant for fear. But once you move, every decision gives you feedback. Feedback brings clarity. Clarity destroys doubt. Let's ground that idea in a story. A young designer told me she couldn't launch her portfolio until it was perfect. Every week she found new flaws. Every month new excuses. 2 years later, her folder was overflowing, her career was standing still. Finally, she pressed upload on version good enough. That moment taught her something meditation never did. The mind calms when direction replaces hesitation. You don't silence overthinking by waiting for your mind to approve the next step. You silence it by taking the step, then proving to your mind it survived. That repetition rewires trust. Another technique, breathe through resistance, literally. Each time your head starts racing, inhale through the nose, slow exhale through the mouth once or twice. You're not trying to meditate your way into emptiness, you're releasing the hold of tension. The physiology of breathing tells the brain we're safe. In safety, thoughts slow down naturally. Remember, overthinking thrives in uncertainty. You cannot remove uncertainty from life, you can only increase your ability to stay calm inside it. Confidence is not built on having all answers. It's built on knowing you'll adapt when answers change. When your thoughts start accelerating, ask yourself one sharp question. What decision can I make right now without complete information? Then make it. Small, imperfect, immediate. Each executed micro-decision trims the size of the storm. You will never outrun thoughts, but you can out-discipline them. The mind respects repetition. Tell it enough times, I choose what matters, and it listens. Tell it once, be quiet, and it laughs. Let's widen the lens. Why is this so crucial? because the inner war steals not only peace, it steals potential. When energy is wasted fighting yourself, none remains to build the life you actually want. The project, the relationship, the health, the dream, all of it sits paused behind analysis. The world doesn't reward hesitation, it rewards clarity. It rewards those who walk forward even while afraid. You cannot think your way into leadership. You act your way there. Before you end today, try one exercise. Write down 3 thoughts that repeat daily. Don't solve them yet. Just describe them word for word. Then next to each, write what you can control and what you can't. Cross out what you can't. Focus on what remains. That's practical self-command. Do this nightly for 1 week. You'll feel mental space open where panic used to live. That space is power. It's you reclaiming energy from noise. Peace, focus, discipline, these are built, not found. Every repetition strengthens the ability to hear your mind without surrendering to it. And when you finally master that, you don't just survive the noise, you redirect it into purpose. This is the moment the storm becomes the current that moves you forward. This is the turning point, where you stop reacting and start leading. Because once you learn to command your thoughts, the battlefield turns silent and the silence finally belongs to you. Chapter 2. Fear is the real engine of overthinking. You may believe you overthink because you care, because you want the best outcome, because you're responsible. But every spiral of overthinking hides the same engine underneath: fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being judged, fear of being hurt again, fear of what you can't control. If you pull apart any anxious loop, you will find fear at the center turning the gears. Fear masks itself as caution, as intelligence, as wisdom. It tells you not to rush. It tells you to wait for a sign, to gather more information, to think one more time. But fear never says move, because fear's only objective is survival, not success. Here's the paradox. The harder you try to protect yourself from possible pain, the smaller your life becomes. Every avoided risk is a wall you build inside your mind. Over time, those walls start to look like safety. They're not. They're prisons made of good intentions. Think about a pilot. He doesn't stop flying when turbulence hits. He trusts his instruments. Fear says drop altitude. Training says hold course. That single choice, trust over panic, decides whether he lands safely. Life works exactly the same way. Fear is natural. Obsession is optional. You can't stop fear from knocking. You can stop inviting it to stay for dinner. Every time you postpone a decision because the time isn't right, ask yourself, who said that, logic or fear? If it's logic, you'll feel focused. If it's fear, you'll feel paralyzed. That physical difference is the signal. Learn it. Because recognition is the first act of power. Overthinking is fear trying to negotiate certainty from an uncertain world. It keeps replaying what-if scenarios, hoping one of them will make the future safe. But safety doesn't live in prediction. It lives in preparation and adaptation. When you were a child, you learned by doing, by touching, by falling, by repeating. That's also how confidence is formed in adulthood. But once fear takes control, you start demanding guarantees before you take the first step. That's when growth stops. Let's ground this in a picture. A manager delays promoting a team member because maybe someone better will appear. A musician delays releasing a song until every note is flawless. A couple delays commitment because what if we change later? Different stories, same pattern. Fear wearing different clothes, delay, perfection, hesitation. And behind each the same silent sentence: I need to know it will work before I try. You'll never know. And that's the freedom you've been avoiding. Fear sells certainty you can never afford. It whispers, if you think longer, if you plan better, pain won't reach you. But pain still comes, and now you've added regret to it. That's the real cost of overthinking, the double pain of acting too late. To win this round, you must expose fear early. Start asking a better question. What's the worst that realistically happens if I act? 9 times out of 10, the answer is discomfort, not disaster. And if it's discomfort, you can handle it. Discomfort builds strength. Avoidance builds fantasy. Fear feeds on imagination. The more images you create of failure, the stronger fear becomes. Reverse the process. Instead of imagining everything that can go wrong, picture everything that can grow right. Visualize momentum, not collapse. Both are imaginary until action proves which one wins. There's a difference between danger and discomfort. Danger threatens life. Discomfort threatens ego. Most fear in ordinary life is ego-based. Fear of appearing foolish, fear of disappointing someone. Those are not life threats. They're pride threats, and pride recovers faster than opportunity. Here's a small drill. When fear rises, write down exactly what it's saying. Then answer out loud, "Thank you for the warning. I choose progress anyway." It sounds simple, but it teaches authority. You're telling the brain, I heard you, but I'm driving. Leaders, artists, founders, anyone who succeeds under uncertainty, use the same internal language. They treat fear as data, not destiny. They study it like a weather report, useful for preparation, irrelevant to direction. A storm doesn't cancel the mission. It defines the gear you pack. This is where emotional control meets mental toughness. You don't attack fear, you outperform it. Every time you take a step while afraid, you teach your mind that fear misjudged the risk. After a few repetitions, the mind updates its belief. We survive fear. That's confidence built through evidence, not pep talk. Every confident person you admire once obeyed fear and paid the price. Their calm today isn't natural. It's earned through thousands of moments where they walked in anyway. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's discipline inside fear. Here's a truth you need to memorize. Fear speaks in volume, commitment speaks in consistency. Commitment whispers, but wins because it never stops moving. Let fear scream, just keep walking. You can use this framework anytime you feel paralyzed. Identify the fear, label it honestly, reduce it to concrete terms. What exactly am I afraid will happen? Plan one defensive measure, then take the first offensive action immediately after. That resets mental chemistry from cortisol to clarity, because action signals safety to the brain more effectively than reassurance. The moment you move, you prove control, and fear begins to fall asleep when proof replaces promise. The more you act under fear, the smaller fear becomes. Each repetition teaches safety through evidence. That's how soldiers, surgeons, and entrepreneurs build calm. They've replaced imagination with data. You can too. Every time you avoid something, fear grows a bit larger. Every time you do it despite shaking hands, fear shrinks a bit more. Shrink it 100 times and you wake up one morning realizing quiet has replaced noise. That silence isn't empty, it's earned. It's what happens when your brain finally trusts your actions more than its worries. You will still feel fear, you'll just stop bowing to it. That's when thinking becomes tool again, not tyrant. Remember this sentence as you leave this chapter. Fear fuels overthinking, but action drains its tank. The cure isn't courage, it's movement. Fear can't drive a moving car. And once you start steering through motion, clarity follows. The road ahead remains uncertain, but the driver? The driver is now fearless enough to keep going. Chapter 3. Confusion is a lack of knowledge, not a curse. Confusion isn't a flaw in your mind, it's a signal from it. It means there's missing information, not missing intelligence. But most people panic the moment uncertainty appears. They mistake confusion for weakness and rush to fill the gap with worry. That's how overthinking sneaks in. When knowledge thins out, imagination storms in to take over. Without facts, the brain builds fiction. You've lived this. A delayed message makes you imagine disaster. A short conversation replays until you invent motives that never existed. The mind hates blanks, so it fills them with the loudest fears available. Yet confusion is not an enemy. It's the mind's invitation to learn. It says, I need more light, not more noise. When you respond with curiosity, confusion teaches. When you respond with panic, confusion punishes. Let's slow this down. Look at children. They ask why 100 times a day. They're confused constantly, and that curiosity fuels faster growth than any adult achieves. The difference is that they don't shame themselves for not knowing yet. They see confusion as a question, not a verdict. Somewhere in adulthood, we lose that mindset. We start believing we're supposed to have all the answers, and when we don't, our pride invents stories to hide the gap. That's what overthinking really is, and storytelling to protect ego. If you can replace that with learning, clarity becomes automatic. Imagine you're driving through heavy fog. You can slam the wheel in panic, or you can slow down, turn on the low beams, stay steady. When the fog lifts, you continue safely. That's how confusion works. You don't resist it, you reduce speed and keep learning until vision returns. Confusion in business, relationships, or goals simply means you've reached the edge of your current knowledge. It doesn't mean stop, it means study. Think about this sequence. Ignorance says, I already know. Confusion says, I don't know yet. Wisdom says, let me find out. That yet is everything. It turns shame into possibility. Here's why confusion feels painful. Your brain loves patterns. When reality doesn't match an old pattern, tension appears. That tension is confusion, not danger. But the primitive brain reads it as threat and floods you with stress hormones. Then stories of loss and failure kick in. That's a biological misfire, not destiny. Once you understand that mechanism, you stop assigning moral weight to not knowing. You can look at confusion like an engineer, not a victim. Here's a real example. A trader loses money, feels overwhelmed, calls himself careless, but later discovers he never truly understood risk management. The problem wasn't recklessness, it was lack of understanding. Knowledge, not emotion, fixes repetition. This is the formula. Confusion plus education equals clarity. Confusion plus panic equals chaos. Education doesn't always mean textbooks or mentors. It means turning your curiosity back on. It means asking better questions. What part of this don't I understand? Who can explain it simply? What does evidence show? Not fear. Practicing those questions stops mental spin. Overthinking thrives on fog. Knowledge burns fog like sunlight. Many people waste years interpreting confusion as permanent failure. They misread the signal. Confusion doesn't mean I can't, it means I haven't yet. That subtle shift reopens every closed door. Let's talk about relationships. Two people argue, neither feels heard. Each leaves convinced the other doesn't care. In truth, both are confused about communication styles. One listens for logic, the other for emotion. Weeks of silence follow due to wounded pride, when one honest conversation about difference could have given peace. That's the cost of untreated confusion, relationships that break under preventable misunderstanding. Now imagine responding differently. Next time confusion arises, instead of retreating, approach it like an experiment. Say aloud, I don't fully get this yet. You'll notice an immediate drop in tension. Admitting uncertainty calms physiology because honesty ends pretense. You stop performing knowledge and start seeking it. In high-performance environments, that's the skill that separates steady minds from anxious ones. The best surgeons, pilots, and athletes admit what they need clarified faster than anyone else. They don't stall their learning behind pride. That humility keeps them safe under pressure. Here's a sentence worth remembering. Humility is faster than fear. Fear pauses to hide confusion. Humility admits confusion, learns, then moves. That speed saves careers, relationships, and health. You might ask, what if I'm the only one who doesn't understand? You won't be. You'll be the only one honest enough to admit it, and honesty is how leaders rise out of crowds. No one trusts the person pretending to know everything. Sometimes confusion means you're growing. When you upgrade any part of your life, your job, mindset, or habits, the brain has to rewrite old programs. That rewrite feels chaotic at first, but it's the same chaos that comes before skill. A dancer stumbling during new choreography isn't failing, she's updating her instincts. So when confusion visits, welcome it. Say, good, my mind is stretching. That phrase alone converts anxiety into motivation. It tells the brain this struggle has a purpose. You can even schedule moments of deliberate confusion. Expose yourself to something new each week. Learn a subject you know nothing about. Attempt a task slightly out of comfort. You'll build confusion tolerance. That tolerance turns potential anxiety into practiced curiosity. Because here's the truth. The difference between a nervous beginner and a confident expert is time spent inside confusion without running away. When you overthink during confusion, you trade progress for prediction. You imagine outcomes instead of studying inputs. Knowledge, not imagination, ends confusion. Ask, read, observe, clarify, act. You don't wait for confidence to start learning. Learning creates confidence. That cause and effect rule never changes. Every time you learn something new, an old fear loses relevance. That's why growth feels lighter. Fear relies on ignorance. Once understanding expands, fear no longer finds space to live. Think of confusion as a mental sunrise. At first light, there's haze, but soon shapes appear. Details sharpen until the landscape becomes clear. You can't force that moment by panicking. You allow it by staying still and paying attention. So, next time your mind feels scattered, repeat this quietly. I'm not lost. I'm learning. Do it until the line feels real, because it is real. Confusion is not a curse, it's the moment before clarity. Every skill, every strong decision, every wise life grew from someone brave enough to stay curious instead of scared. Overthinking says, figure it all out first. Learning says, figure it out while doing. One delays life, the other builds it. Choose the second. Because once you start meeting confusion with curiosity instead of panic, you won't just think better, you'll live braver. And that bravery, repeated daily, becomes the calm you've been searching for since the noise began. Chapter 4. The lie of what feels right. You have been told all your life to follow what feels right. Follow your heart. Trust your instincts. Do what feels good. It sounds poetic. It sounds wise. But that advice has fooled more people than failure ever has, because feelings are not compasses. They are weather. And if you treat weather like navigation, you will always drift off course. What feels right changes with hunger, mood, exhaustion, and fear. 10 minutes of stress can turn your values upside down. That is why chasing what feels right often leads to regret after the emotion fades. True direction is rarely what feels easiest. It is what feels aligned with who you said you want to become. That difference is everything. Let's expose the lie. The idea of follow your feelings sells because it removes responsibility. If it feels right, then it must be right. And if it goes wrong, you can blame emotion, not decision. But maturity begins when you stop using emotions as an excuse and start using principles as a guide. You don't ignore feelings. You listen, interpret, verify. You let them inform your logic, not override it. Heart and head are partners. One senses danger, the other plans safety. When the heart screams and the head whispers, wisdom sits somewhere between. Think about diet as an example. In the moment, sugar feels right. Fatigue says, I deserve comfort. But long-term alignment says, I deserve consistency. One feeling wins pleasure today, the other feeds confidence tomorrow. If you only follow the first signal, you stay stuck in cycles of guilt because feelings are built for immediate survival, not strategic growth. The same trap appears in relationships. You meet someone new. The chemistry is wild, the rush feels like destiny, but chemistry is comfort, not character. You mistake excitement for connection, desire for compatibility. Months later, the same heat burns you and you say, I thought it felt right. It did. But right for a moment doesn't always mean right for a mission. Your direction cannot depend on a temperature that changes hourly. It must depend on discipline, on values you designed when your mind was calm. Listen, emotional storms are temporary. Principles are anchors. Decide values in peace so you have something solid when peace disappears. I tell clients to keep a small list, a written compass of 5 non-negotiables. This is who I am. This is what matters. This is the kind of life I'm building. Then, when emotion says, turn back, compare the impulse to that list. If it doesn't align, let the feeling pass. Discipline is simply loyalty to your deeper reasons when shallow ones scream louder. Let's talk about business for a second. An entrepreneur starts strong, then hits loss after loss. Emotion says quit, logic says adjust. She wants to walk away because it no longer feels inspiring. But real passion isn't constant excitement, it's commitment that survives boredom and fear. If you only work when it feels right, you'll never build anything that lasts long enough to feel proud of. The best performers in any field learned long ago that consistency feels boring. Training, repetition, recovery, all dull. But dull work compounds into mastery, and mastery feels better than motivation ever will. So here's the rule. Don't aim to feel right. Aim to act right. Acting right means honouring the process even when emotions disagree. When something feels wrong, pause and trace it. Ask, is this instinct or insecurity? Instinct warns about danger. Insecurity warns about discomfort. Most of life's growth sits on the other side of discomfort, not danger. So when every emotion screams, stop, double check whether it's protecting or limiting you. You've probably noticed how fear often feels right. It tells you not to speak up, not to risk rejection, not to take the harder path. It feels safe, it feels smart. But that safety has a price, the death of expansion. That is the silent cost of obeying every emotion. Your next level never meets you. Imagine a soldier refusing a mission because adrenaline made his legs shake. Imagine a surgeon quitting mid-operation because the pressure felt wrong. They don't base performance on feeling, they base it on training. Training remembers what emotion forgets. You can build the same kind of training for decision-making. Review your past wins. Notice how they rarely began with perfect confidence. Usually you acted while uncertain, then clarity appeared halfway in. That's proof that feel right is a terrible starting signal, but a great finishing reward. You feel right after acting right, not before. That's why discipline must lead and emotion must follow. If you want to develop this leadership internally, try this technique. Every morning, define one value you will act on regardless of mood, maybe honesty, patience, or follow-through. Throughout the day, watch how often the feeling to quit appears. Each time you hold the line, the brain updates its default. Oh, we act on principle now, not vibe. That rewiring builds self-trust. The second layer is reflection at night. Ask, did I honour who I want to be even when it didn't feel good? That single question accelerates growth more than any motivational quote ever could. Let's clarify something important. Emotions are data, not dictators. They tell you what matters, but not what to do. If you ignore them entirely, you become cold and reckless. If you worship them unconditionally, you become fragile and inconsistent. Balance is mastery, emotion signals, principle steers. The big myth is that happy people always feel good. No, happy people feel deeply but act wisely. They don't rely on momentary emotion for guidance. They rely on aligned action for stability. Every time you override a temporary feeling with a long-term value, you strengthen identity. Identity creates peace because it saves you from debating who you are in every situation. So when someone says, follow your heart, understand what that truly means. It means let your heart express truth and let your mind organize it into strategy. Both belong. Neither should rule alone. Remember this closing mantra. Feels right is comfort. Acts right is character. Feels right is emotion. Acts right is evolution. Each time you choose principle over preference, you build a mind that trusts itself again. And the more you trust yourself, the quieter the noise becomes, because peace doesn't come from doing what feels easy. It comes from knowing you did what was necessary. That's the grown-up truth behind every remarkable person you admire. They stopped chasing what felt right and started living what is right. Do that long enough, and one day, right will finally start to feel good too. Chapter 5. Obsession is a form of distrust. Most people mistake obsession for discipline. They call it focus. They call it drive. But underneath, obsession is usually hiding fear. The fear that if you stop grinding for even a second, everything will fall apart. That is not discipline. That is distrust in disguise. Discipline comes from confidence. Obsession comes from insecurity. Discipline says, I'm in control of my effort. Obsession says, I don't trust my effort unless it hurts. This is why obsessors never rest. They think exhaustion proves commitment. But true mastery doesn't demand exhaustion, it demands precision. Picture a professional archer. He draws the bow, aims, breathes, releases, resets. He doesn't keep pulling the string just to prove he's working. He trusts the process. He knows when to draw and when to lower the bow. That trust is the difference between power and panic. When you're obsessed, the mind becomes an anxious supervisor checking the same work again and again. Did I send the right message? Did I make the right impression? Did I miss something? That constant checking destroys creativity and confidence. Overthinking and obsession are twins. Both keep you busy instead of effective, and both grow in the absence of trust. Trust in yourself, trust in timing, trust in the work you've already done. Ask yourself right now, am I improving my craft, or am I chasing proof that I'm enough? The second question exposes the truth. Obsession always starts where self-trust ends. You start micromanaging yourself, rehearsing conversations, refreshing notifications, rewriting the same plan. You tell yourself you're being thorough, but you're really saying, I don't believe it's okay to stop. That belief costs your health, your sleep, and often your results. Because obsession corrodes perspective. When you can't pause, you can't evaluate. You burn energy repeating what worked yesterday, afraid to let it evolve. Discipline, on the other hand, is rhythm. It knows when to apply pressure and when to recharge. It's a system, not a storm. Think about any high-performing athlete, training season, rest season, recovery days. They trust recovery as part of progress. Obsession sees rest as regression. That's why obsessive people hit burnout while disciplined ones hit milestones. If you fear slowing down, ask yourself, what will collapse if I rest? Most of the time, the answer is nothing but ego. Ego fears invisibility, silence, missed opportunities. But life is not a competition for constant visibility. It's a marathon of sustainability. Half an hour of focused, calm work outperforms 6 hours of frantic perfectionism. Still, many spend years chasing the second version, afraid of being overtaken. That fear keeps them perpetually behind, because quality falls wherever trust falls. I've coached entrepreneurs who thought obsession would make them invincible. They built empires on adrenaline and collapsed under anxiety. They couldn't delegate because control felt like oxygen. They ended up supervising shadows while their real growth waited outside systems they refused to trust. Control without trust is just surveillance. You end up spying on your own progress, never enjoying it. Here's a mental check-in you can use. When you feel the urge to redo something that's already finished, pause and ask, what am I afraid of right now? Usually it's judgment or uncertainty. Recognition of that emotion gives you a choice. Correct from calm or repeat from fear. Corrections improve things. Repetitions born of panic only waste energy. Discipline corrects. Obsession repeats. That's the clearest dividing line between the two. Another clue. Obsession lives in extremes. All or nothing. Always or never. You either crush the workout or call yourself lazy. You either please everyone or isolate completely. Thinking in extremes is the first symptom of mental burnout. Balance requires nuance. Obsession erases it. Start practicing this middle ground. Instead of chasing perfect, chase precise. Instead of demanding more, demand better. Instead of trying harder, try clearer. Each small correction replaces desperate control with deliberate leadership. And leadership of the self is the starting point of peace. Here's what trust actually looks like in daily life. You finish a project and let it exist without endless revision. You send the message without rereading it for the 10th time. You publish the post, you allow silence after the call, you resist the need to fill every pause. That restraint is not laziness, it's confidence expressed through calm. In a society addicted to proving itself, calm looks radical. But calm doesn't mean you've stopped caring, it means you've learned care without chaos. When you start building that kind of calm, people around you notice. You respond instead of react. You plan without panic. Suddenly energy flows back into creativity because it's no longer spent on anxiety. Here is a simple framework to replace obsession with trust. First, define what enough looks like before you start. Set a boundary, time, effort, or quality level, and commit to stopping when you reach it. Second, remind yourself daily that evidence proves more than doubt. If you've met your standard once, you can meet it again. Trust that. Third, build pauses directly into your routine. Schedule stillness. Rest is an appointment with regeneration, not a missed opportunity. This pattern keeps efficiency high and anxiety low. Ask anyone who's sustained long-term excellence. They don't fight time, they cooperate with it. Obsession tries to outrun time. Discipline moves with it. That rhythm creates longevity. Now, don't confuse effort with obsession. Effort is momentary intensity applied to a specific task. Obsession is unchecked intensity applied to everything. Effort finishes strong. Obsession never finishes at all. There's an old saying, the bow that's always drawn soon breaks. That's not poetry. That's biology. Constant tension burns muscle and mind alike. Release is part of aim. Letting go also means forgiveness, especially forgiving yourself for not being perfect yet. The obsessive mind never forgives. It keeps replaying errors as proof you're unworthy of rest. But awareness plus correction is already redemption. Once you fix the lesson, you've earned the right to move on. You were never meant to prove your worth through exhaustion. You prove it through consistency. So from now on, replace the phrase "I can't stop" with "I choose balance." Say it out loud if you must. Your nervous system listens when words become steady habits. Trust will never grow in a mind that won't pause. Stillness is where trust breathes. When you finally allow that stillness, you realize what drove the obsession wasn't love for the work. It was fear of losing control. But you cannot lead anything you refuse to release. Let this be your new standard. Work with focus. Rest with faith. Repeat with rhythm. Obsession proves nothing. Balance proves mastery. And the mind that trusts itself no longer needs chaos to feel alive. Chapter 6. Switch from control to command. Control feels powerful, but it isn't. Control is reactive. Command is responsive. The stronger you try to control life, the more life pushes back. But when you learn command, everything changes. The tone of your voice, the pace of your decisions, even the quality of your peace. Let's define the difference. Control is fear pretending to be order. Command is confidence rooted in clarity. Control tightens your muscles and narrows your thinking. Command relaxes your breath and expands your choices. One burns fuel through overthinking, the other creates flow through focus. You've probably heard people say, "I'd just like to be in control," and at first it sounds admirable. But what most mean is, "I can't handle surprise." That's not strength. That's anxiety wrapped in perfectionism. Command is built on acceptance. You accept that you cannot prevent every outcome, but you decide to shape your response to any outcome. That single pivot transforms rage into composure, panic into preparation, noise into clarity. Imagine holding water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. Try holding gently. Suddenly the water stays. Control squeezes, command supports. When you try to control every variable, you drown in worry. You check everything twice, you rehearse what-ifs, you exhaust yourself chasing guarantees. That's what makes control heavy. It's an endless contest against uncertainty. But command is lighter because it works with uncertainty, not against it. It says, "I can't predict, but I can perform." When you approach life that way, your mind quiets because it recognizes leadership. The brain follows calm authority. That's why soldiers react faster under trained leaders. Not because fear vanishes, but because direction is clear. You can become that leader for yourself. Start noticing where you confuse these two forces. When you argue to prove a point instead of find truth, that's control. When you listen, assess, decide, that's command. When you obsess over what others think, that's control. When you focus on delivering your best regardless of opinion, that's command. Look around you. Families, teams, relationships. The most stable ones are not ruled by control. They operate through trust and framework. Rules without fear, expectations without obsession. That's command culture. In your personal life, command begins by separating what you influence from what you imagine. Most mental chaos comes from trying to manage imagination. You can't manage what isn't real yet. Shift your energy to what exists in front of you. Ask one practical question. What do I actually have authority over right now? It might be your expression, your tone, your next message, your next step. Start there. Observe the relief that follows. One of the deepest myths of control is the belief that constant vigilance equals power. Real power needs rest. A controlled mind is tense. A commanded mind knows how to breathe between battles. Try this practice today. Whenever anxiety rises, repeat inside your head, I choose clarity over control. It isn't a slogan. It's a physiological reset. You're teaching your nervous system that chaos doesn't require panic. Clarity creates space, and space restores strength. Let me show you through a story. A pilot once told me that when an engine alarm goes off mid-flight, the worst thing a new trainee does is rush. They grab every lever at once. Commanders pause for 2 seconds, breathe, and start the checklist. Because those 2 seconds create decisions instead of reactions. That's the power of command under pressure. Now picture your everyday version of that cockpit. That argument you just replayed 15 times, that sudden shift at work, that worry about the future, and each is an alarm in your system. You can grab every lever or you can breathe and start the checklist. What's true right now? What's controllable? What must wait? You reclaim composure not by forcing calm, but by following clarity. There's another secret here. Control is rooted in ego. You control because you want things your way. Command is rooted in purpose. You want things done the best way. Ego tightens outcomes to identity. If I fail, I'm worthless. Purpose frees outcomes to learning. If I fail, I adjust. That separation blinds control and empowers command. When you operate from command, you speak differently. Your tone lowers. Your words shorten. You stop convincing and start confirming. Others feel the steadiness, and trust begins to return, both from others and inside yourself. The reason peace feels distant to chronically controlled minds is that control demands constant defense. It needs the world to behave. Command simply needs you to be awake. You can learn wakefulness in small moments. When traffic cuts you off, test your reflex. Grip or guide. When deadlines tighten, do you curse or prioritize? Every choice between grip and guide teaches the nervous system your leadership style. Developing command is not overnight work. It's built through micro decisions that reshape how your mind interprets tension. You're no longer asking, how do I stop this challenge? You're asking, who do I need to be to handle it well? That new question remodels your brain's wiring. Command relies on 3 simple habits: pause, process, proceed. Pause. Create space between stimulus and reaction. Process. Name what's actually happening versus what you fear might be happening. Proceed. Act from alignment, not agitation. When practiced daily, these 3 steps reduce emotional reactivity more than any productivity tool ever could. Let's connect this to leadership again. A controlled boss imposes fear to keep order. A commanding leader inspires respect by keeping clarity visible. One generates obedience, the other cultivates initiative. The same contrast applies inside your own head. A controlled mind uses punishment to stay on track. A commanding mind uses purpose. You don't need to bully yourself into results. You need to direct yourself with clarity of mission. Ask, what does completion look like here? What effort will satisfy me even if outcomes vary? Then work until that line is met and release. Release is not quitting. It's strategic breathing. It gives your unconscious time to integrate progress and plan next moves. Every break taken from intention refuels consistency. You'll know command is replacing control when interruptions stop feeling like personal insults. Traffic, delays, misunderstandings. They used to trigger you because they trespassed on your need for total control. Now they become practice grounds for composure. The reward is quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't shout or defend. It simply operates, corrects, and continues. If there's one phrase to carry from this chapter, make it this. Control reacts to life. Command orchestrates it. You develop command the same way a musician develops tempo, through repetition. Each time chaos rises, practice your rhythm. Pause, process, proceed. One day you'll catch yourself handling what used to break you. That's when you'll realize power was never about gripping harder. It was about guiding wiser. And in that moment, life stops feeling like an opponent and starts feeling like a collaboration. Because command doesn't cage energy, it conducts it. And the more skillfully you conduct, the quieter your world becomes, even while it stays in motion. That's where the real strength lives. Not in control, but in composure. Chapter 7. The truth about uncertainty. People spend their whole lives trying to escape uncertainty. They analyze it, predict it, plan around it, fight it. But the truth is simple and uncomfortable. Life was never designed to be certain. Every meaning worth living for, growth, love, success, exists on the other side of unpredictability. Uncertainty is not your enemy. It's the environment where courage is built. Think about it. Every great decision you ever made required moving forward without a guarantee. The job you applied for, not knowing if you'd be accepted. The relationship you entered, not knowing if it would last. The idea you pursued, not knowing if it would succeed. Without uncertainty, there would be no bravery at all, because everything would already be known. So why does it still terrify us? Because the human brain equates uncertainty with danger. It's an ancient reflex. Primitive minds survive by eliminating unknowns. In modern life, we confuse the unknown with the unsafe. Our survival instinct fires anxiety where exploration is actually required. That's where overthinking feeds itself. Your mind keeps creating scenarios, trying to turn uncertainty into certainty. You imagine every outcome, every path, every contingency, but there will always be one variable you can't predict, always, and that variable is what keeps life alive. If you could predict everything, you'd stop paying attention, curiosity would die, ambition would fade. Love would be predictable transaction. Certainty kills fascination, and fascination is fuel for purpose. The quest to remove uncertainty is how people remove vitality from their lives. They build cages, comfortable ones, but cages nonetheless, and call them plans. Let's expose how it happens. You get a new idea, it feels exciting for a moment. Then a voice says, what if it doesn't work? You try to calculate, what if I fail? What if I lose money? What if I look stupid? Before long, every what if becomes a wall, so you wait in the name of preparation, but waiting mutates into paralysis. That paralysis has nothing to do with caution. It's avoidance wearing the uniform of logic. You tell yourself you're gathering data, but you're actually gathering dust. Preparation is meaningful only until it becomes postponement. The line between the two is bold. Preparation creates motion, postponement protects fear. The truth about uncertainty is this: there is no perfect choice. You either learn from progress or you learn from pain. Both teach lessons. Certainty never will. Look at inventors, athletes, creators. Not one of them reached mastery through guarantees. They simply learned to carry uncertainty like oxygen. At first it burns, then it sustains. I call this the pilot mind. When a plane flies through clouds, the pilot loses visual reference. Every part of his body says, pull up, turn back. But he trusts the instruments, not the panic. The instruments don't predict clear skies, they guide through grey ones. That's how you must approach life's uncertainty. Eyes open, heart steady, trusting process more than comfort. Let's make it practical. Every time you hesitate due to unknowns, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What is actually at risk? 2. What can I prepare for reasonably? 3. What must I accept as uncontrollable? You'll notice that the third question always has the longest list, and that's not a flaw. That's the proof that control was never the goal. Surrendering false control doesn't make you powerless. It frees energy for precision in what you can influence. You can prepare the effort, not the outcome. You can shape process, not luck. You can control attitude, not applause. You can manage your actions, not the results of them. The first half of freedom is accepting those boundaries. The second half is acting boldly within them. Confidence doesn't come from removing uncertainty. It comes from proving to yourself that you can function inside it. Stop waiting for conditions to settle. Use your next small move to build proof. There's an old truth across psychology and performance training. Exposure dissolves fear. What we repeatedly experience stops feeling dangerous. Every time you take a step into the unknown, you lower the panic threshold. Eventually, uncertainty doesn't trigger alarm. It triggers alertness. Alertness is clarity with energy. An uncertain future seen with alert attention becomes playground, not prison. Let's stretch deeper. One reason we cling to certainty is ego's need for control over identity. We define ourselves by outcomes. Success makes me worthy, failure makes me flawed. So of course we fear uncertain results. It feels like gambling identity itself. But identity built on performance is fragile. Replace it with identity built on character. No matter what happens, I handle it with integrity. The moment you adopt that stance, uncertainty loses its threat. Because now, whatever happens, you win, either by success or by strength gained. Every storm you've survived before carried the same pattern. You feared it, then you handled it. Look carefully. Handling always followed fear, never preceded it. That is proof that your capacity appears only once you start moving, never before. That sequence of fear, then proof, is the training ground of courage. So next time uncertainty shows up, greet it by name. Say, I know you. You're the space where I grow. This turns hesitation into invitation. Language matters. It rewrites meaning. When you name uncertainty as growth instead of threat, your body follows the new command. Let's not sugarcoat it. Uncertainty can still hurt. You will still feel stress, confusion, maybe panic. That's normal feedback from a system stretching beyond habit. You don't remove discomfort, you regulate it. That regulation, breathing slower, focusing shorter, is how command from the last chapter merges with this one. Command says, I don't need perfect information to take intelligent action. Calm action in uncertainty always outperforms frantic reaction in partial clarity. Look at it like a chess player. Nobody knows the opponent's next move. Uncertainty drives the entire game. The masters win, not by panic, but by calculating calmly under fog. They trust that consistent logic produces advantage over time. The same rule applies to your days. Calm repetition beats emotional prediction. Here is a mind training ritual you can start right now. Once a day, review something you did that turned out fine even though you weren't sure first. Write it down. Notice the pattern. Uncertainty had no power except what you gave it. That list becomes evidence, and evidence builds confidence far better than pep talk ever could. Now, let's discuss acceptance versus surrender. Acceptance says, I see uncertainty, and I'll act anyway. Surrender says, I give up trying. They are not the same. Acceptance is strength. Surrender is escape. Confuse the two, and you'll either over-control or completely withdraw. Balance lives right in the middle. Awake courage, steady heart. To live effectively, build a tolerance for maybe. Not everything needs resolution to move forward. Hold decisions gently. It's better to steer through ambiguity than to sink in indecision. Here's the ultimate truth you must carry forward. Life's unpredictability is not chaos. It's opportunity disguised in motion. Every unexpected twist expands capacity. Every surprise teaches agility. Every setback creates invention. If certainty were possible, growth would end. And you were not built to end. You were built to evolve. So stop chasing sure things. Start building sure strength. The strongest people in the world don't have fewer unknowns. They have better reactions. And the habit of steady reaction starts small. Breathing before deciding, acting before doubting, reflecting after outcomes. The calmest minds aren't fortune tellers. They're adapters. They know life won't warn them in advance. They trust they'll meet it prepared. That's your next upgrade. You don't need to remove uncertainty. You need to remove your resistance to it. When you can walk confidently through the fog, you no longer fear what lies ahead. Because you finally understand, clarity doesn't kill uncertainty, movement does. And once you move, uncertainty becomes momentum. It stops being the storm, it becomes the wind behind your progress. Chapter 8. Deep Thinking. The Antidote to Overthinking. At first glance, deep thinking sounds like overthinking with better grammar. But they could not be more different. Overthinking traps you in circles. Deep thinking walks in straight lines. Overthinking drains energy. Deep thinking creates understanding. Overthinking looks busy. Deep thinking builds calm. The difference is not in how much you think, but in how you think. Deep thinking is the quiet discipline of investigating truth instead of repeating noise. It requires patience, focus, structure. It doesn't demand more hours, it demands better questions. Here's the simplest definition. Overthinking asks, what if everything goes wrong? Deep thinking asks, what can I learn either way? One chases control, the other chases clarity. The modern world praises speed. You scroll, swipe, refresh, react. Information hits you faster than understanding can keep up. That's why your mind feels loud even when nothing's happening around you. It's overloaded processing data without building insight. Deep thinking is the reset button. It slows information into comprehension. It filters quantity into quality. It turns reaction into reflection. To understand it, let's talk about silence. Not the forced, uncomfortable silence filled with tension, but deliberate mental stillness. Space to examine thought with curiosity instead of judgment. Silence is not laziness, it is strategy. The brain requires quiet to build connections, the same way muscles require rest to grow. Without that silence, ideas stay scattered. You have fragments of wisdom, but no integration. When you practice deep thinking, you allow the mind to put those fragments together. That's how insight forms, the click between previously disconnected pieces of knowledge. Let's make this practical. Deep thinking begins with a question that matters, not what's wrong with me or why is life unfair. Those questions are emotional echoes. Deep thinkers reframe them into power questions. What's actually happening here? What outcome do I want most? What patterns do I keep repeating? That shift from complaint to curiosity clears confusion faster than any inspirational quote. Consider journaling. Most people use journals to vent emotion. That's fine. But venting alone settles nothing. Real journaling happens when you begin analyzing your own analysis. You observe your thoughts like a scientist observing reactions. No drama, just data. Write, then ask, is this fact, belief, or habit? That single layer of questioning turns raw emotion into structured insight. Deep thinking is not positive thinking, it's honest thinking. Sometimes it feels uncomfortable because truth often contradicts convenience, but clarity always rewards the discomfort that discovers it. Look at history's great innovators and leaders. They all practiced deliberate solitude, not because they were antisocial, but because thought needed space. Einstein walked, Da Vinci sketched freely. Stoic philosophers journaled daily, different methods, same intent. Slow the noise so the signal grows louder. You can do the same. Each day carve 10 minutes away from screens. Ask one question worth answering. Sit with it until emotion calms and logic wakes. Don't chase the answer, invite it. Notice how your breathing slows as clarity begins to unfold naturally. There is a physical reason this works. Neuroscience shows that insight doesn't come from constant focus. It emerges during relaxed reflection. When attention detaches slightly, the brain links remote ideas. That's why solutions often appear in showers, walks, or quiet drives. Your conscious mind stops gripping. Your subconscious begins serving. What kills that process is impatience. Overthinkers panic during silence. They interpret pause as danger. But deep thinkers honor pauses as progress. Every time you let a question breathe, your brain digs deeper tunnels to connect forgotten memories and knowledge. Patience doesn't waste time, it compounds depth. Here's a pattern you can practice. Stop. See. Simplify. Stop. When the mental swirl begins, physically step back. See and observe your thoughts objectively. Name their emotional tone. Simplify. Get back to the core problem instead of wrestling the whole storm. For example, instead of my life's a mess, narrow to I feel overwhelmed because I said yes to too many things. There's your real issue. Boundaries, not fate. That precision transforms impossibility into action. Deep thinking always returns to root causes. It spares you the pain of solving symptoms. The beauty is that you don't need hours of solitude or a mountain retreat. You need intention. Turn small moments, your commute, your morning coffee, into laboratories of reflection. Mute the podcast for 5 minutes. Ask, what lesson is trying to repeat in my life lately? You'll be surprised how quickly answers start appearing when you stop chasing noise. As your practice strengthens, a second skill appears, detachment. You begin realizing that this inner observer is calm even when circumstances aren't. Thoughts flow, feelings rise, but awareness remains still underneath. From that stillness, responses become wiser, words fewer, timing better. That's the quiet discipline part of deep thinking, controlled reflection. Not freezing emotion, not suppressing it, but letting it settle until truth separates from turbulence. You'll start noticing another change. Decisions that used to take days of looping now take minutes, because once you understand the principle behind a problem, repetition dies. You recognize patterns faster. You trust intuition more. And here's the surprise. True intuition is the result of accumulated deep thinking, not magic. The brain that's practiced understanding earns instinct. Compare that to impulsive reaction fueled by emotion. That's not intuition, that's impatience. Think of a chess master looking at a board. He doesn't analyze every square, he recognizes patterns instantly because he's thought deeply thousands of times before. That's deep thinking moving at speed. You can achieve that too in your own field. Keep this contrast clear in your mind. Overthinking exaggerates details until you freeze. Deep thinking extracts details until you can act. Overthinking asks, what if? Deep thinking asks, what now? That single change of question ends paralysis. Many ask, can everyone learn to think deeply? Yes, but you must train focus like you train muscle. Set intentional thinking sessions. Protect them fiercely. During them, no distraction, no multitasking, no endless scrolling. You are claiming sacred time to build mental strength. Over time, that habit rewrites your identity. You stop seeing yourself as anxious or indecisive. You start seeing yourself as methodical, calm, measured. That shift builds self-trust, the quiet certainty that whatever happens, you can think your way through. Here's an exercise I recommend often. Each night, summarize the day in 3 lines. 1 positive observation, 1 challenge, 1 lesson. It forces you to process experiences instead of carrying them unexamined. Accumulated daily insight becomes lifelong intelligence. Remember, deep thinking isn't about finding quick delight, it's about building durable peace. You begin to realize the mind doesn't need to stop, it needs to go deeper until noise becomes meaning. When you habitually think deeply, you develop a radar for wisdom. You stop reacting to surface stimuli and start navigating by principles. Life appears simpler, not because it got easier, but because your perception sharpened. This finally is the antidote to overthinking, not silence, not distraction, not denial, understanding. Understanding dissolves the fog of panic. Understanding replaces confusion with direction. Understanding, repeated long enough, builds certainty inside uncertainty. So the next time your mind loops on worries, don't fight the storm. Dive beneath it. Ask better questions, listen longer, simplify the signal. That's deep thinking in action. And when clarity rises again, you'll notice something powerful. The silence you once feared becomes the space you now protect. Because in that silence, you don't lose yourself, you finally meet yourself. Chapter 9. Build a mind that obeys your focus. You live in an age that profits from your distraction. Every sound, screen, and notification is designed to steal your attention. If your focus breaks easily, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because the world is training you to be scatterbrained, but you can train back. And when you do, your mind starts obeying your focus instead of chasing its own noise. Focus is the new wealth. It's the currency of progress, creativity, and peace. The ability to hold attention on one thing, long enough for depth to appear, separates those who change their lives from those who only consume them. Still, it's not easy. When you finally sit to work, 10 invisible magnets pull you away, checking messages, glancing at updates, remembering something trivial. You tell yourself you'll return quickly, but each switch costs mental strength. Attention isn't free, it's fuel. And the more you scatter it, the less energy remains for anything meaningful. Training focus begins by treating attention like a muscle. A muscle doesn't grow by thinking about lifting weights, it grows by resistance. Every time you choose to stay with one task while temptation whispers, you are building neurological strength. It won't feel dramatic, it will feel dull. That dullness is exactly where growth hides. Let's start with understanding why focus fades. Your brain is wired for novelty. New information releases dopamine, a reward that makes you feel productive even when nothing is achieved. That's why scrolling feels satisfying but exhausting. The dopamine taps out before meaning arrives. Focus feels harder because it delays reward in favor of results. It asks patience from a world addicted to instant stimulation. To rebuild attention, separate stimulation from substance. Ask before every click, every conversation, every task. Will this feed me or drain me? If it feeds you, intellectually, emotionally, professionally, stay with it. If it drains you, close it fast. Protect mental nutrition the way athletes protect physical diet. You can use short drills to retrain the mind. Start with 10-minute focus intervals. Pick one task, silence every notification, set a timer. When distractions scream, observe them without obeying. When the timer ends, stand, breathe, walk a minute, then repeat. Simple, boring, powerful. Within weeks, 10 minutes will feel easy, and you'll expand to 20, then 30. Remember, consistency transforms biology. Neurons that fire together wire together. Each repetition strengthens the neural pathway responsible for sustained attention. Soon, focus stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like home. But focus isn't only about work, it's about presence. If you can't pay attention in small moments, you'll never hold it in big ones. Focus on each conversation completely. Put the phone face down, meet eyes, listen fully. Your relationships will improve faster than any productivity hack could promise. People rarely need advice, they crave undivided attention. You also need boundaries around mental energy itself. Treat it like a battery with capacity, not an endless outlet. Every yes drains charge, every deliberate no preserves it. Say no more often, not out of selfishness but out of stewardship. You can serve others better when your attention isn't scattered across 20 unfinished commitments. Focus requires subtraction as much as intention. Remove clutter, digital, emotional, creative. You cannot command a mind surrounded by noise. Declutter your environment. Clarity is contagious. A clean workspace mirrors a structured mind. A chaotic space reflects habit loops of distraction. Here's a truth that shocks most people. Multitasking doesn't exist. The brain can't parallel process complex tasks. It only switches rapidly between them, paying a fatigue tax each time. Every switch drains chemical resources of decision and attention. That's why after a day of multitasking, you feel both busy and unfulfilled. Eliminate that illusion. Single task your way to excellence. Let's talk about ritual. Every focused mind was built inside reliable ritual. The athlete warms up, the musician tunes the instrument. You must do the same for attention. Create a pre-focus sequence, a short routine that signals the brain, it's time. Maybe it's making tea, adjusting the chair, playing a certain instrumental track. Do it the same way each time. The brain anchors ritual to concentration until focus becomes automatic. Focus deepens with emotional alignment too. When you connect effort to meaning, the mind obeys easier. Ask yourself, why does this matter right now? If you can't answer clearly, pause. Maybe the task is random noise disguised as obligation. The brain resists meaningless effort but devotes itself freely to purpose. Anchor focus to purpose and longevity follows. Then there is the mental reset called deliberate defocus. After heavy concentration, step away for 5 minutes without stimulus. No scrolling, no conversation, no noise. Look at the horizon or close your eyes. The frontal lobes need brief emptiness to process and store what they learned. Ignoring pauses burns out neurons that control focus. Use rest as strategy, not reward. Here's a story. A client once told me he could never read more than a few pages before his mind drifted. We built a simple plan, 1 page per session, every day, for a week. He laughed at the tiny goal, but agreed. By week 2, he read without counting pages. By week 3, he craved the quiet. He didn't gain superpower, he gained structure. Structure freed attention from chaos. Focus also decides emotional quality. Whatever you attend to expands. Attend to complaint, life feels heavier. Attend to gratitude, life lifts. That's not mysticism, that's cognitive science. The brain literally strengthens circuits for whatever patterns you repeatedly highlight. So be ruthless about focus, because focus becomes perception, and perception becomes reality. As focus grows, awareness of distraction becomes faster. You begin noticing impulses before they hijack attention. That's mastery, awareness arriving before action. At that stage, you don't fight distractions, you simply notice them and stay present. That calm noticing is your proof of command from the previous chapter. Remember this, a scattered mind cannot produce calm results. Everything powerful flows through sustained attention, design, health, relationships, spirituality. If you treat focus casually, your results will stay fractional. But if you guard it fiercely, every area of life compounds. Try this tonight. Set 1 non-negotiable focal task for tomorrow. Write it clearly. The specific outcome, the time block, the rule of no interruptions. When distraction tempts you, repeat out loud, "This is my focus hour." Sound and language anchor action. You are literally commanding your mind like a leader giving instruction. That verbal cue trains internal obedience faster than silent intention. Soon, your mind begins to listen to your words again. It waits for firm, clear direction instead of random noise. That is control transmuted into command, and command refined into precision. You'll know focus has matured when peace returns even while you work. No racing thoughts, no compulsive checking, just motion inside meaning. That's when the world around you slows down, even as your results speed up. The truth is, focus doesn't create perfection, it creates presence, and presence is the birthplace of fulfillment. Let this be your definition of mastery. A mind trained to obey focus is a mind free from friction. You don't chase moments, they arrive. You don't force clarity, it unfolds. That's the quiet power of sustained attention. So protect it as you would protect your future, because they are the same thing. You've reached the end of this journey, but it's really the beginning of your command over mind and emotion. Across these chapters, you learned that peace doesn't come from silence, it comes from structure. You learned that fear fuels overthinking, confusion asks for knowledge, and discipline, not obsession, builds trust. You saw how deep thinking replaces noise with meaning, and how focus holds that meaning steady until results appear. Now you know the truth, the mind was never your enemy. It was an instrument waiting for direction. You don't need to destroy thoughts, you need to direct them. Every moment of awareness, every act of patience, every calm response is proof that mastery is already forming inside you. So from this point forward, stop waiting for certainty. Lead anyway, control less, command more. And when the noise rises again, as it will, remember, the power has always been yours. Because the mind that follows every thought is a prisoner, but the mind that decides what to think next is finally free.